So for those of you who are worried about your brain ending up with Alzheimer's disease or dementia, losing your memory, it's a very, very common concern. And a study last week came out, and they're blaming a different cause than most studies. Now, most studies say that Alzheimer's is a brain disease. It's not incorrect, right? If you're more savvy, you may say that beta amyloid is really the part that accumulates. That's the problem. Again, not really wrong. But what this new study comes out and says is that it's the immune system that is really the problem when we look at Alzheimer's disease. The immune system starts to go haywire, it damages the brain, and that's where you end up. So ultimately what they're saying in this is Alzheimer's is an autoimmune disease. Now that's not surprising to me, because we're finding that more and more things are autoimmune diseases. There's over 90 autoimmune diseases. It was suggested last year that even like obesity is a neurodevelopmental disorder, which are linked to autoimmunity. So there's a lot of different things that go into this. Other things that are very interesting is we know that chronic increase in cortisol levels are linked to Alzheimer's disease, right? So the longer term you're under stress, the more likely you are to have Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease sometimes is called type 3 diabetes, so it's related to blood sugar dysregulation. So there's a lot of things that go with autoimmunity that are leading to this path of Alzheimer's disease. So, it's not necessarily surprising to me to see this information come out that Alzheimer's is an autoimmune disease. So how do they say that this happens? Ultimately what they're saying happens is when they're saying that beta amyloid is an immune tissue, so it's an immune molecule. And when we get exposed to any kind of thing, then bacteria and trauma specifically, we increase the amount of beta amyloid that's in our system. The problem with this is, especially when we're looking at any kind of infectious material, bacteria particularly, the cell wall of that bacteria looks exactly like, or very, very similar to anyway, the fatty tissue that makes up our brain. So if you get an increase in that beta amyloid and your body mistakes that fatty brain tissue for bacteria, it starts attacking it, it starts damaging it. As it starts damaging it and eating away, you end up with less and less brain tissue, and hence you have Alzheimer's disease. Now, there are a lot of things that we need to look at as we dive into this, right? So, what are important things on this? If you have heavy metal toxicity, if you have mold toxicity, if you have any kind of viral type of infection that's sitting there long term, Epstein-Barr or herpes virus, or different things like this that tend to sit there and cause problems. If you have things like glyphosate exposure, all of those things can make the matter worse, right? Because they're already throwing off the body's immune system. They're throwing off the ability for you to use that immune system. They're throwing off the ability for you to detoxify these things. They're throwing all of this stuff off. Now, the interesting thing about glyphosate or Roundup is that anytime that it is present, it actually increases the neurotoxicity of other molecules. So if you have glyphosate and you have all of these other things going on, it's going to greatly increase the likelihood of you moving toward Alzheimer's disease, at least theoretically. There is no research to back up that claim, but at least in theory, that's a logical leap to make, right? If you already have these other things that are increasing beta amyloid, and we start to add on things that increase the toxicity of other substances, it's just a logical jump that this could make things worse. So, what is my recommendation to you? First of all, where are you? Where are you starting out? It's important to kind of understand exactly where you are right now, and that's where we're figuring out, your underlying susceptibilities, your underlying strengths and weaknesses is really, really important, and that's why we usually start our programs with lab work. If we understand exactly where you're starting, then we have a little bit better idea of where we need to go from there. But is this something that is, detrimental to you? I mean, well, it's obviously detrimental to you. Does it change the trajectory? Obviously, if you're susceptible to these things, or you have any of these things going on, then yeah, it's going to change your trajectory. It's also not something that we need to just like jump out and freak out about. It doesn't really change anything. we're finding some of the underlying reasoning that happens, and that is a good thing, because if we understand things better, it prevents progression of things, right? Where we have to be very, very careful is in taking care of ourselves, right? We can't just wait until something happens and then take care of it. We've talked about this in other videos. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of people do. They wait until they have symptoms and then they're like, all right, what can we do about it? And it's either too late or it's very, very difficult once we get to that point where we have symptoms. It's very, very expensive. It's very, very time consuming. It's very, very, just difficult in every aspect. Alzheimer's disease is projected to start 20 to 50 years before you actually get the diagnosis. So paying attention to the things you're doing right now, even if you're 20, 30 years old. I mean, if you want to avoid this is important stuff, right? This is the time to pay attention to it. If we live to 85 years old, the percentage chance that you're going to have Alzheimer's is 50-50. It's at 85, and I mean, some people aren't going to live there, and that is what it is, right? We could do the things to increase our lifespan, but we really need to do things to increase our health span too. Focusing on longevity is important, but what good is that longevity if you're going to be sick the entire time that you're here? We want to increase our longevity with our health span. We want to be able to enjoy healthy extra years, right? So focusing on this now is really where you need to pay attention. Now, who needs to really worry about this? People who have Alzheimer's disease in their family, obviously, are a little bit more susceptible to this. People who have autoimmunity in their family are more susceptible to this. If people in your family have any kind of blood sugar dysregulation, that's something to look into. If you have any kind of blood sugar dysregulation, that's even more reason to look into this. If you have any kind of autoimmunity, even more reason to look at this. We know that autoimmunities tend to run in families. We know that they tend to be in the same individual. As we get more and more immune dysfunction, we start to have other immune consequences, right? So people that have autoimmunity are more likely to be diagnosed with another autoimmunity as well. So I hope that this helps. I hope that this gives you a good place to start. But like I said, it's something that you don't necessarily have to freak out. If you've got this in the family, it doesn't mean that you have to have it. Most of the things that we are faced with are lifestyle diseases, right? They're things that our lifestyle leads to, which means we have a little bit more control over how we progress there. It's not something where, Grandpa had this and Dad had this, so I'm definitely stuck with it. That's not the way that it works. In most cases, things are not genetic. They are epigenetic in nature, which gives us power to make the change. So if you have questions about this, I'm happy to answer however I can. But like I said, I as always, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you tuning in, and I hope that you found this helpful. If you do, please like, subscribe, share the information, because there are a lot of people out there that need this information. So I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you on the next video.